Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. Hopefully going to be doing a lot of these over the summer. It's going to get busy and I feel quite intense this summer in terms of Chelsea news. Already today, a couple of days after the season has ended, the takeover is imminent. We hope, we pray that it is imminent because it's been dragged on for so long. And particularly you look at that date, 24th of May, we're getting close to the sanction and the license kind of being at its end, which obviously is bad news for Chelsea if it goes over that. But hopefully that will be done and Todd Boehly's consortium will be Chelsea's owners. That will be all finalised hopefully this week in the coming days and maybe even hours. But then the transfer kind of season begins and kind of Chelsea have to act quick because due to the sanctions, we are kind of behind a lot of our rivals in terms of contracts, in terms of those targets, in terms of selling players, just everything regarding the club basically. So getting into today's video, Matt Law's big piece in the Telegraph today, mainly about defensive targets, because there's been a lot of discussion and that kind of feels like it's going to be first on the menu maybe for Chelsea, is finding those replacements for Antonio Rudiger and Andreas Christensen and maybe even Cesar Azpilicueta because he could still be off. And then also some attacking stuff from that piece as well regarding Raheem Sterling. I want to speak about both Kounde and Vardio and kind of them as targets and what it potentially means as well for younger defenders at the club and kind of the future there. I also want to end today's video on Christian Pulisic because there was a lot of maybe people have forgotten already given how fast the news cycle goes, but there was a lot of kind of discussion about him removing his Chelsea photo from his Instagram page and I think Chelsea from his bio as well. What does that mean? Because a lot of the attackers, their futures are kind of up in the air and is this going to be the last time we've kind of seen Pulisic? Is this going to be the end of Pulisic's time at Chelsea in the coming weeks and months, even with American ownership? So a lot to get into. So let's get into it straight away with Matt Law's piece. As you can see here, Chelsea have drawn up an 8-man list of defenders in a bid to move as quickly as possible to solve the club's centre-back crisis once the Todd Boehly-led takeover goes through. Sources believe Todd Boehly's takeover could be fully approved in the next 48 to 72 hours, with optimism on all sides that it will be completed before the May 31st operating licence deadline. Chelsea plan to move quickly in the transfer market once the club is given the green light to resume normal business under Boehly, with Jules Kounde and Jules Kounde both top of their list of defensive targets. And finally, just here on Raheem Sterling, selling one or all of Werner, Ziyech and Pulisic could see Chelsea consider a move for Sterling from Manchester City, who has 1 year remaining left on his deal and is yet to decide on his future. As I say, always links in the description box below for the articles I speak about in Let's Talk Chelsea. So much. There's also information about central midfield as well, which is something we've covered so much on the channel. But focusing first on defence, I would be pretty shocked at this point if Jules Kounde is not one of Chelsea's first signings this summer. It's been going on for nearly a year, this saga. It nearly happened at the back end of the last summer transfer window where Jules Kounde had even travelled, I think, to Paris in kind of preparation for the deal to go through. Sevilla bumped up their asking price right at the end, and of course Chelsea didn't really budge on the negotiations they'd already had with Sevilla, and the deal didn't go through, and Trevor Chalobah got his opportunity, which was a great surprise this season. But now Chelsea are back for Jules Kounde, and we've even seen Kounde pictured in London. Whether that has got anything to do with this move, it's only speculation. Let's just call it a coincidence. But I do think in the case of Kounde, all the reports we're seeing, my colleague at Football London, Adam Newson, has got a piece going out tomorrow that you definitely want to check out at Football London about this situation. And yeah, I'm pretty confident this is going to happen. And as people know who've watched the channel, I was skeptical about Kounde last year, but as the months after the deal kind of fell through last summer, I did start to watch a bit of him. And there are flaws within his game. There still are those concerns over his height, but I think on the right side of the fence, particularly of Reece James starting to have to feel as sort of a centre-back, I look at Kounde's speed, I look at his age, and particularly his aggressive nature as well. I know that's a concern for people, but I quite like the confrontational nature of Jules Kounde. He's a proactive defender. I think he'd be quite comfortable in kind of the way Chelsea want to build from the back, and hopefully he can develop into a greater one. The problem is with Chelsea's kind of squad building, particularly in the contract situation with 2 defenders leaving, potentially 3, is you'll see this with a lot of the kind of things I'm talking about today. It's so difficult for Chelsea because they haven't planned the squad that well. So you kind of are in threat of, because you kind of want to lower the age of players and you kind of want to sign younger players, it kind of feels like a smarter play with some areas of the pitch. You do have the danger of kind of blocking the path of some other players. But I do feel just numbers wise and also what that side of defence I think needs moving forward for Thomas Tuchel. I feel Kounde is probably a really good option, and hopefully with maybe the rust he's had this year, maybe raw side of his game, particularly next to a player like Thiago Silva, who's still going to be at Chelsea next season. You hope he can really develop his game, and this is the dream move he's wanted, so it looks like his wish is going to come true in the coming weeks. So hopefully we'll be speaking about Jules Kounde finally as a Chelsea player in the coming weeks. Vardio is a new kind of target for Chelsea. Only in recent months have we heard his name. Apparently Tuchel really favours him from Leipzig in the Bundesliga. From people who've watched him, I'm not going to claim to be an expert, and I do want to say, as I'm probably going to do on Football London with a lot of Chelsea's targets, as I did for Gleason Bremer, another centre-back from Torino, left-sided, but is quite versatile. I've written about him, kind of go on Y-Scout, look at his stats compared to current Chelsea defenders, and kind of just looking at his game. I'm going to do that for pretty much all of Chelsea's targets this summer on Football London if you want sort of more detail. So I can't claim at the moment to be an expert of him, and people who have watched him speak very highly of him. So I'm not going to sort of dispute and kind of rubbish all those claims. I think my biggest concern with him compared to Kounde on one side is Levi Colwill, who has developed so well at Huddersfield this season. It very much feels like kind of Mark Guehi .2 with Colwill this season at Huddersfield. He's in the Championship playoff final against Nottingham Forest at Wembley on Saturday, a massive game like Guehi was for Swansea last year. He's an outstanding talent for his age and his maturity, and you just kind of feel that, is this a smart move by Chelsea? And given the trend of young players leaving last summer, could Chelsea save their money, promote Levi Colwill? Maybe if they want to sign another defender, why Bremer I think is a decent option, who's around 25-26, is you maybe sign an older defender. So what you aren't getting is instantly a battle of 2 very similar ages where one of them is probably going to have to leave. I mean, that is kind of the situation we've got in further up the pitch with so many young attackers, is given the need for those players to get minutes and the lack of sort of opportunities for them. You feel like with Pulisic, Hudson-Odoi and a few others in that area, eventually something's going to break eventually, because those players will want to have consistent minutes, and maybe you're going to get into a similar situation again in the centre-back area, particularly of Colwill, who I'd like to see given a chance this summer under Thomas Tuchel. And if you're going to rubbish Colwill about him only playing in the Championship and only having 1 season of senior football, I'll show you Mark Guehi, how quickly he integrated at Crystal Palace after leaving Chelsea last summer. But if you're just going off, well, he doesn't have minutes in the Premier League, he doesn't have minutes in sort of a top 5 European league, well then Mason Mount would have never been given a chance. Fikayo Tomori, another defender we sold last summer, wouldn't have been given a chance. Trevor Chalobah wouldn't have been given a chance. Reece James would not have been given a chance. If that's kind of your main kind of criteria for sort of promoting players. These players have to get experience eventually, and I do feel the Championship is a really, really good league. I feel like some players that we've sent out on loan recently could have benefited from a Championship loan, because I feel it's such a physical but also technically good league that's improving, I think, every season. And I think with the amount of minutes you get, just the intensity week in, week out, I think it helps really develop players. And I want to see Colwill given a chance. I'm not going to say Vardio is going to be a crap player, and if we do sign him, it's the end of the world. I do kind of have my concerns about blocking the path of Colwill, and given the trend we saw last summer of Cobham graduates kind of looking at the situation and saying, I don't need to stick around here for years going on loan after loan after loan. I can go into a Premier League first team, and I think people will see all those examples in the past year, other Premier League clubs. And a bit like Broja, you're seeing like several Premier League clubs and Serie A clubs too looking at Broja and seeing an opportunity if the chance isn't going to be there for him this summer. But let's quickly move on to this Raheem Sterling talk. I don't know how legitimate it is, and I think that what you have to kind of factor in, as I wrote about for Football London today, is that there's a lot of moving parts in here. Number one, Chelsea have to sell some of their attackers. Absolutely, that's kind of first before we sign any attackers. People will have to leave, and kind of getting buyers for those players, and making sure that all works out. And as well, then you move on to doing a deal with Man City for Raheem Sterling. And does Raheem Sterling even want to join Chelsea? All hypotheticals. I've been a fan of Raheem Sterling. I do rate him very highly. I guess the question is, because you are so concerned about Chelsea signing attacking players, because we've spent over 300 million since like Jan 2019, and things haven't worked really in the main. And you're kind of concerned of Chelsea spending a lot again and putting themselves in a similar situation. And kind of the age of Sterling, 27, he's slap bang prime of his career. There'd maybe be a motivation for him to come to Chelsea and prove himself. I think he'd become one of our regular starters, because even though I've seen some people sort of question his consistency, I mean, his consistency or inconsistency comparatively at Man City would make him a very consistent player based on Chelsea's history, recent history with attackers. I think I looked at it, he is... Kai Havertz and Lukaku didn't reach double figures in Premier League goals this season, but he has done that in 5 consecutive Premier League seasons from a wide area. Now, you're kind of asking, as I said in my last video, about kind of what this team needs in an attack and kind of a maverick player. Is Raheem Sterling that player? I think at times, mostly what I think of Sterling, a better version of Christian Pulisic. He gets inside the box, anticipation, and he finishes chances in Pep Guardiola's system for England as well last year at the Euros. A lot of sort of tap-ins, but he's always in that great spot in the centre of the box to finish chances. That's how he's kind of developed his game, and a classic Man City template goal is kind of, moving it through midfield, getting it out wide to the byline, across the goal. I think Sterling scored goals against Chelsea like this, and he taps it into basically an open net. And obviously that's a lot of repetition at Man City, a lot of muscle memory, a lot of those automatisms, as they call them, automatons, in terms of players knowing where they're going to be. And obviously at Chelsea, we're so far behind a lot of that. But then you kind of contrast Sterling with Premier League ready experience. I think he would score goals at Chelsea, compared to maybe a younger player like Ousmane Dembele, who is potentially not on a free because he cost a lot in wages, but there's that opportunity there for a player Tuchel has worked with before, who maybe is a little bit more of someone who's going to try daring things a little bit more than Sterling, who has become a very good system player. I'm not denying Raheem Sterling's technique. He has become a brilliant player, obviously, and you have to have good technique, I think, to play in Pep Guardiola's side. So it's not the case that I would be upset with Sterling arriving. You just kind of, again, you're looking at Chelsea's transfer sort of setup this year, and what are they looking for? If we're looking for a rebuild, should we be looking for players under the age of 25? But then do you want to balance that out with some senior players as well to add that experience for Chelsea to still remain competitive? And if there is an opportunity for Raheem Sterling, it kind of does feel like, I'm not going to say a no-brainer, because Lukaku was a no-brainer and look how that turned out. But I would say he is a very, very good player, and may just be one of those attackers that Tuchel was looking for to improve things. But let me know your opinions, because I mean, I'm kind of conflicted, and I'm concerned about Chelsea signing more attackers, and we would have to sell some currently. And who would that be? Could one of those attackers we sell be Christian Pulisic? I kind of am interested, because whenever I talk about Pulisic on this channel, if people have been watching this channel, and I always kind of say this, it's kind of a bit boring repeating it now. People should know that I've been fair to Pulisic. I think I've been very fair to Christian Pulisic on this channel. I've consistently backed him to score more goals than he ever has for Chelsea. Every summer I'm like, this is going to be the year he's going to score like 20 goals, but mainly because of his anticipation inside the box. He has remained fit since November, so he's had a lot of opportunities, and he hasn't always impressed. I think there's been some high moments, but it hasn't quite been the season where he really puts himself out in front of a load of other attackers, and he didn't have the best end to the season with some really poor misses. So, and his dad tweeting something after, was it the Everton game, I think it was, and then taking it down about sort of him being unhappy at Chelsea, and then this happening on his Instagram. If he is maybe removing Chelsea from his Instagram, it's a weird thing to do, and for players of his kind of status, especially on social media with such a big following from America, and a big club like Chelsea, those things are going to be noticed. So I don't know why he'd do them without kind of knowing what the consequences would be. It's his Instagram account, you know, he can do what he likes, man, but it is a very weird act to make, especially after a season where you're already being linked with a move away. I still kind of have my doubts a Todd Boehly led American ownership would want to sell Pulisic, particularly as we approach a pre-season where Chelsea are going out to America, potentially with the first time we can have Pulisic as a Chelsea player in America for a pre-season tour. And just the marketability of Pulisic, you know, that's apparently he was like one of the only players mentioned in the brochure that they sent to prospective owners in recent months. I think that says a lot about how the club views Christian Pulisic and how potential owners view Christian Pulisic. That doesn't mean that his performances on the pitch should be excused if they aren't good enough. And I feel that a decision kind of has to be made about several attackers this summer, ones that haven't performed, particularly say Hudson-Odoi, Werner, Pulisic, all on kind of one side of the pitch and all of kind of an age where you can't really just say, well, they're kind of getting to the end of their career, so you wait maybe a couple of years to revamp that area. A bit like, say, the Willian Pedro situation, where you could kind of accept them still being there because they were going to be phased out and then younger players were going to come in. But you've got so many players of a similar age in that area that need minutes right now. And how many more years with Pulisic, with Hudson-Odoi? Listen, I'm not singling any of them out. I think a lot of them kind of fall into that same bracket of will they come good for Chelsea, and how long can Chelsea wait with these players, or are we better taking money for them now and reinvesting in the squad with players that are more suitable and are going to perform quickly and adapt quickly to our style of play. I know there's a lot of people who watch this channel and watch Chelsea content, and we know from Football London when we post anything about Pulisic, if it isn't overly positive, people are quite unhappy. But I don't think, you know, we can all sort of sit here and say that the situation with Pulisic is perfect. I think sort of a decision has to be made, I think, for the player, for the club, for Tuchel, of where we're going with Pulisic, because if he's unhappy, do you really want a player that's unhappy? And again, I think you'd get a decent fee for him, a bit like Timo Werner. Then you move to get someone else who's going to be here, going to be happy here, going to be motivated here, and is going to perform hopefully to his best. So let me know your opinions on Pulisic and everything I've discussed today. Thank you for the positive feedback yesterday. It really meant the world to me to see some of your comments. Happy to see me posting videos again. Lots of content, please, not only on this channel, but go over to my author page on Football London. Tons of articles coming out about a wide variety of issues, not all of them I've spoken about today, and we've got a lot of coverage coming up, as you expect, not only reflecting on the season, but as well the transfers, the takeover, all that stuff. So thank you guys for watching. Follow me on Twitter @SonOfChelsea, and I'll see you again.